Hi, good morning. Or wait, it's not morning for you.
Hello.
No, it's actually evening, and I've just collected my small son from kindergarten.
Nice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, how do I
Um,
still do this?
yeah, right. Reese, for I guess two questions. One for the slides that I uploaded. Are those
Oh,
going to be
yes, let me
available?
see if they're... Because Yes, it's ready to be shared, is what it
Okay.
said.
Okay. So later I can just share it through MeetEcho rather than.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay.
And then when we want to go through the issues, I don't think I'm going to be able to share from my machine. So I don't know if
Okay,
someone
yeah, I hope
else
we'll
or
get someone
you could.
else
Cool.
willing to do it. Worst case, I can do it. Good morning, folks. Good to see people trickle in. Let's give it 2 more minutes until 5 past the hour. Also, would anybody be willing to take notes later, please? I mean, obviously, if we're discussing issues, we don't need anybody to take notes, but later we might.
I can only stay for the first hour, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Come on, people, it's an important discussion for TAPS. Is anybody wanting to take notes? Please. All right, I'll ask again later. It's 5 past the hour. I hope you're all here. I've had people speak yet, so I'll assume some of us are here. Welcome everybody to our TAPS interim meeting. And I sent an updated agenda in which we are going to be discussing potentially some of our outstanding issues on our documents first. And then we're gonna dive into our implementation, discoverability mappings, and next steps agenda. Would anyone be willing to share their screen for our GitHub issues, please? Tommy said he can't do it today. Also, thank you so much, Michael, for filing all these issues. And everyone for...
Yeah, okay, I can do it.
Yay,
Yes.
Michael! Thank you so
I figure
much.
out how, because this is in the browser, strangely. Yeah. If Safari lets me do it, then I'll do it. Otherwise,
Oh,
I'll
I
switch.
hope it will.
Yeah. Oh, you mean right away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's
Yes.
see.
Granting your screen share. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of recursion here.
Yep. But I can see your
Okay,
browser.
so you should see that you see it.
Yes, I can see it.
Great.
Gory, Gory's asking for screen share as well.
Oh, looks good from Michael. So.
Yeah, it looks good. Good for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. It was a mistake.
Shall we go through these these pull requests?
Yep.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. I'll take it from the bottom. I think mostly they should be easy. Yeah. Okay. This one. I can see that Tommy here tried to get away from being just about SCTP by saying, for example. But for example, doesn't really fit, because that indicates that there would be a general explanation about this in the sentences before, and then comes an example, but it doesn't fit in that way. So my proposal is to just explain in general when the underlying transport connection supports multi-streaming, this can be done.
Could we say something, combine them, like when the underlying transport connection supports multi-streaming, such as for SCTP?
Yeah. Can do that. Multi-streaming. Yeah, is such as for multi-streaming.
Or I guess you could just say such as. Is it just such as
when the
SCTP?
underlying transport connection, when an underlying transport connection such as HTTP supports multi-streaming. Is that good?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Then if that's all right, I'll commit it.
Yep.
Any more comments, anybody?
There should be some commas to be picky, but
I pressed too early. Sorry.
You did it.
I can still change it.
I mean the such as SCTP is shouldn't that be a
Anna's right. It should be in commas or brackets.
Okay. Yeah.
You could do
I
parentheses
think it
too.
should actually be after multi-streaming. When an underlying transport connection supports multi. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, in brackets. Okay, supports multi-streaming. Like this.
That works.
Would be fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Then I'll commit this.
And otherwise, yeah, this PR makes things a lot simpler. That's always good.
All right, then I'll merge it. Oh, it's still checking. Okay, I can do it later. We have send failures. Right, I think Gory had a few comments, but I think they were okay and fixed. Do you want to see the issue that's related to that? I mean, I think the issue was that there should be something in the API about this, and there is something in the API about this, so this is just explicitly in mentioning the events.
Yep. Yeah, and I just commented on a typo in there, and you fixed that, so that's good.
Yeah, right. Right, you had also that. Okay, then I'll commit that one.
Yeah, let's do this one.
Okay. Then I can probably merge the other one.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Okay, if you do that.
Yep.
discussion text on receiving min-max. I think we were okay on this as a comment from Gory, though. No review from Gory.
No, yeah, and I just the
should
person
be
was
okay.
asking, because previously we said minimum.
Yes.
Like, oh, you can control flow control with minimum, and he was saying, shouldn't it say maximum? And I had suggested let's just say both, because technically both can control your flow control.
Anybody else? Any comments on this one?
Yeah, flow control's just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, this was really just something that our reviewer stumbled over, that it said minimum here, and he thought that maybe it should say maximum, or should it say both, or should it say which, so we fixed that. These are the easiest, harmless things to do. System policy. Oh yeah, we have 2 okays already. Anybody, any comments on this? This was, what was this about even? Yeah, right.
There's an issue.
Sorry.
Yeah, the issue suggested a number of things. So one was just omitting that end allowed by the system, which I think is fine. Then there was a broader comment from the reviewer about, oh, should this all be normative? And I think we should avoid that.
Yeah, I think the normative
he's
one
also confused about-
is anyway part of this bigger other issue where we have to look through all the can and must and whatnot. But I figured that we can close that issue and discuss it there.
Right. And then the other part was, if there is essentially not an error, but if a connection can't be created because of some policy reason, when does it fail? And I think that's what this new sentence here is saying. It's like, it's when you create the connection, like for initiator, listen, it's not on the pre-connection.
Right.
Which is good.
Yeah, that's what you wrote in the issue.
But this,
I wrote that
this is a little bit, I mean, this can be read as you need to report when it's not, when you have a violation, even if you have some other that satisfies it, right? So that is not, you only need to report this if you cannot find a solution. You don't report all that fail.
You're saying that if I have 3 paths and 2 of them are prohibited for me, but I have another one that works, then I don't report an error because of errors.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't that true? And if I read this now, it almost sounds like, any...
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should clarify, instead of just saying such failures, just say like, if such failures prevent a connection from being established.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let me try to suggest text here.
I can do it like this. If such failures, I'm doing it already, prevent
if such failures
connection from being established, this should be communicated to the application when creating that connection. Okay, I'll make it into a command. You can take a look at it, but I think that's... Does that work? Maybe if such a failure, huh?
Yeah, but maybe not when creating the connection, because you when trying to
when
create
attempting
the
to create a connection. Yes.
Yeah.
And it should be such a failure, I think. If such a failure prevents a connection from being established, this should be communicated to the application when it attempts to create a connection.
Is that really a failure? Or
to establish.
I really
Actually, not create, establish the connection. If such a failure, then now you have duplication of.
You don't want to say create establish. You want to get rid of one of those words. And then Philip is asking.
But also create isn't really. I mean, what is create? Right? We have this pre-establishment and we have establishment. Do we need to say when? Because it talks about establishing anyway. We could say it should be communicated to the application like this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Oh, the initiate action is probably not the.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
because it's an
I
event,
think saying
right?
initiate is good. And then
Well,
So my question still is failure the right word?
I should take down volume a bit.
like such a violation or
Violation, yes. I don't know why I wrote failure. Such a violation. But this initiate probably didn't have. Just a moment.
I think initiate is where you would generally get the error.
Are you sure?
Oh.
I think we have an event that gives.
Oh, it's a separate event.
That's what I thought. Yeah, exactly. Right. So the initiate is not. So we could probably via an establishment error.
Yeah,
So
I
we
see.
could say via the establishment error event.
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. That's good.
Yep. 3, 2, 1, bam. Okay. Anyway, I pressed the wrong button, sorry. System policy, okay, it's updating, and then there was this from Brian with 3 OKs. Do we even need to discuss? Shall we save time and just merge? I mean, these were all nits. One was saying,
it's
should
all
this
just
not be
nits.
a must not? And yeah, I think with 3 people having looked and others maybe not caring enough, we probably all agree. So I'll merge that. 3, 2, 1, bump. Intro update. Oh, this gets a bit more interesting. So that's the question about these normative statements. Maybe that's the right point to discuss them.
Is this trying to close the big major issue from the guy? Or
not directly, but I'm wondering if we have a statement like that, would that not be an argument to say that we shouldn't have anything prescriptive or normative?
Right. Because we are very intentional about not having the implementation document be normative.
Exactly. So, I mean, on the basis of having written that sentence here, I thought we should probably just remove everything normative and all make it lowercase, and that will just deal with that.
Isn't it already all lowercase?
Well, no, maybe. I can just check.
Let's look.
I think it is.
We already had some kind of consensus that we wanted to avoid uppercase language there.
Okay.
I'm
And
searching
add
the
it to the
document.
big issue, so we don't forget this.
Yeah. I'm searching the document. I do not see any normative language.
Okay.
So, Michael, I think.
Okay, you don't see any.
Yeah.
No, I don't see any normative language anywhere.
Okay, cool.
To add to it.
Okay, then. All right, then I'm gonna merge this one if you're all good with that.
Thought it should be normative, and that is what was confusing. So maybe we, if possible, avoid the same words.
So I think this sentence here is pretty important, right? It makes it clear that you don't. This is just a list of hints, and you can be free to ignore it altogether. So let's be sure that we all agree on this. But I mean, I think that was the plan of this document. So
Yes.
merging.
I think that would be a major change if we wanted to re-add normative language here.
Some checks haven't completed yet. Why is that? Okay. Oh, now I can press the button.
Ooh.
Okay, this is Swift, but these are not many pull requests, and there are many more issues left. Oh yeah, that's the bigger one from Brian. I made a tiny suggestion, which I think he committed already. So there are two things here. We can maybe look at the issue. Well, it is 1153. So let's see. This one. This was suggesting that there is no text there at all regarding management or operational manageability considerations, and we should have something.
Yeah, I think this is sort of like the stock ops tier comment. Where's my operations and manageability section? And so I made something up.
Yeah,
right? And
also
like they were pointing at like the system policy thing, and we had a bunch of discussions about this. Do we want to make system policy be a real thing? And we decided not to, right? So that's what this says.
Yeah,
and then there
I did like very much how you wrote this. And there's also this coexistence of the socket API question here that is also addressed. So let's
right, which was like seemed fairly obvious to me, but I've been looking at this document for 5 years, right? So
yeah,
right.
So is that the one? Yeah,
wanted to and had energy, but then we'll probably have done the other thing. So yeah, we should be doing this now. But we can do this
one,
right? Yeah.
Right, suggesting that we are.
I was just trying to have it be a semicolon rather than a colon.
Yeah.
So I'm actually less. I mean, I think the text that Brian provided is fine, and maybe we should incorporate it. But I'm actually not sure we need any kind of operational considerations because it's really an API document, right?
Exactly.
Like we talk in the architecture document, we do talk about sort of like the system policy thing, and then we don't talk about it anywhere else in the other document. So I think that having somewhere where we say we did that on purpose is useful.
Right. We do mention it in implementation in the section we were just looking at, but it's non-normative and it's
it's not normative and it's not exactly.
That's what I say. I mean, like maybe a little bit shorter version of the text you provided here might be useful, but I really wouldn't call it operation management considerations. Just put it somewhere in the intro or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, you want a different headline.
I don't want the headline. I think it's a standard request to people to provide it, and we don't because we don't have it, so it's fine.
You don't want the headline, but the headline is not there.
The headline's not there? What? The headline's
in
the agreement.
Operations and management considerations. That's right here.
Right, and we don't want that.
We want to move this somewhere else.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
But then why don't we put a
I guess where
we'd have to put it somewhere is the problem.
The meat of this seems to be about the policy. Where do we mention policy in architecture? Can we put it there?
Like up in section 2. I think it's section 2.
Okay.
Let me pull
the. I see.
I'll keep my hands off. I tend to mess things up. I just put a comment. And I'll let somebody do it. I suppose Brian, and maybe we can take a look at the rest.
So basically there's like up the transport services architecture and concepts. Like the last paragraph there, transport service implementation includes the cache state and system policy.
I wonder if it could fit in section 4, right? It's because there's section 4 where we have this big diagram and then we talk about system policy.
And we never said enough about it.
Oh, is that is that transport services architecture and concepts? Is that
exactly?
That's
Just add the policy paragraph there.
Yeah.
All right, because you have it in the diagram.
Let me spend like 5 minutes editing text in the PR, and we can come back to this. I think I know what needs to happen. I'll just edit the branch directly.
Right.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean the other point is this error logging or whatever, which is not wrong, but that's a very big topic, and I think it's really out of scope for this document.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
error logging is basically just there to address the fact that that question was raised in the review. I'm less interested in that being in the document. So if somebody gives feedback that we shouldn't have that, or without
I don't
going
think we should
more
have
in
it in
depth,
architecture.
okay, cool.
If anywhere, we would put it in implementation, but I think it's out of scope for this.
Yep, cool. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay. Yeah, then come a few more that are, well, I mean, I have to admit, I didn't even just get to carefully read and deal with all of them. It was a lot of work to even just copy them over. Does anybody want to discuss this? I mean, I can just make a stab at it after this meeting tomorrow or something, and we can just.
I think it
do
would be
offline.
good to assign issues at least. And then
Yeah,
also
okay.
for the one that is this big check all modal words, we should discuss how we want to approach that.
Okay,
And then
so this particular issue, since I have it open, if I can do it,
okay.
that's okay. Because I think I've been dealing with groups a lot. Okay. So I'll do that one, and I was also gonna do this one, but I'm very happy if somebody else does. What I think what needs to happen is we just find these things and make sure that we don't make any prescriptive statements here that don't exist in the API.
So,
like if something's missing, we should add it in the API.
Sure, but I mean, just as an overall comment, he's pointing out, oh, here's where you use can, could, may, should, would. And he's saying like, oh, because it's not capitalized, its normative status is unclear. My interpretation is that these are strictly non-normative, and it's okay for us to say may and should if we want to.
Yeah.
So
I agree
my
with that.
suggestion here is we do one of two things. One is we just write a sentence right at the top that just says this doesn't make any normative requirements.
Which we did.
It's purely informational.
We did that now.
Yeah, okay, fine. The second thing we could do is I would happily go through and replace should with whatever word, ought to, and may with can and whatever, if people want it. But I mean, with that other sentence in, I'm not sure it's necessary, but I'll happily do it if you want.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
don't
sure
think
this
that's
helps.
necessary.
Nah, this may not help readability so much at that point.
Well, it doesn't make any difference. It only makes difference for reviewers. So I'm convinced that if there are no normative language ever in the document and we just say it, then we're done.
Shall I just close that issue?
Or essentially say that the question is this closed by the fact that we added this explicit statement at the top that none of this is normative?
No, I mean, I think I think what happened is that he has seen all these statements about what an application must be doing, and not looking at your interface draft, it made him think this should really be in the interface draft. So I think it is worthwhile looking through the implementation draft to see if there is anything that we say you have to do this, and it maps to a behavior in the interface draft to make sure that it really is there. Just to see that we're not missing anything. I can do that. It's an annoying job, but I can do that. I think it makes sense to be thorough here.
I mean, I think if you want to do that cross-check, that can of course be good to ensure that we are aligned.
Yeah, I mean, for example, this connection closing thing, that he found something there that I thought we had mentioned in the interface draft, but it really was on in the implementation draft. So there could be others. Shouldn't be, but might. Okay, so I'll write this here. I'll write, given that the introduction clearly states that the whole document is non-normative. The agreement is to just check through all these sentences and make sure that all rules that need to be described in the API are really prescribed, are really written there.
I would delete just, Michael. Just delete the word just. So it doesn't look like you're marginalizing the comment.
Is to
check, fine.
And I'll assign it to myself. And then I'll be happy if I can assign a couple of the others to other people. Let's see. Yeah, the next one is tree nomenclature and language needs. So that was quite some text about.
Wait, did we address 1137?
Sorry, 1137. Oh no, I skipped that one by accident. Sorry. Racing. Yeah, no, that's also connected.
I would like to potentially just close this, since he's saying, can you clarify what's normative, and can you add some shoulds and musts? And I'm like, I think we should just close it.
I mean, this kind of follows from the other one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Needs to clarify which statements are no. Yeah, because it's all just suggestions. Yeah. Okay, then I close it with this comment.
You can say that we clarified that nothing is normative.
Yeah. Done. Beautiful. Tree text. Structuring candidates as a tree. The usual term is root node. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Consideration of multiple candidates in the gathering. So it seems to me that this would be something to assign to Tommy, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Back to this. Handling muxed connections. Multi-string can map each to the. Oh, this could be. Seems like it's. I believe I'm to blame for this. I have a feeling that this is from me. I would assign it to myself and see what you all think. I mean, if anybody else wants to have it, I'd be happy. Just feel responsible because I think the original text was mine.
Yeah. I'm looking through it. None of this seems like a huge problem. I mean, he's pointing out that we're saying that some streams don't require a handshake, and we just say that's so it's unlike TCP. And he's saying we should call it that it is like UDP instead. It was like, okay, I don't.
Yeah.
A necessary
can be a small wording thing. It seems a bit long,
like
small text, so.
I'm not sure if it's even valuable to change it. But if you want to take a stab at it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll assign it to myself. I'll have a read again, think about it, see what happens. Handling connectionless protocols. That was the next. The nuances. Oh yeah, this was, I think, also just editorial. The reason I didn't do it yet is because he's proposing to shift some text from here to there, so it's a bit more work. Yeah. Anyone?
I can have a look at it. It needs to move some. Yeah.
At least that's a suggestion here. Maybe an improvement to gather all that information into this section. Yeah. I'm giving it to you.
It's a little bit unclear if anything needs to be done, but I can have a look.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's not super clear that there's anything wrong with the text.
Yeah. Yeah, but having a look is what we need. So, listeners, these were pretty long, all of them. Should deliver a new connection. What controls the condition if the connection is mapped to a multiplex stream? That was a weird one because we want that to happen automatically. In either case, this is described the API definition. That sounds like a... I mean, I think it shouldn't be in the API. I think it should be something that can just happen. Or would it only happen when you clone? I guess it may only happen when you clone.
Which part are you talking about?
This, if the abstraction of connection presented to the application is mapped to the multiplex stream.
I mean, I think this is a artifact of how we say, at the bottom, different protocols are mapped into TAPS, and we say, okay, this, like the mapping of a connection for this protocol is this.
Yeah.
And different protocols could choose to map themselves differently. And so I think we're just leaving it open to say that something in the future that is technically multiplexing may choose to do it slightly differently.
Well, it has some implications because if you do multiplex, then you have these properties that if you change one, it affects certain things, multiple connections, right? So they have this common behavior.
Right, but for example, like for TCP, the abstraction of a connection presented to the application is mapped to the entire transport stream. It is not mapped to the multiplex stream. So that is the other case. And so in other cases, like Quick, it is mapped to the multiplex stream.
Yeah, I think it can happen automatically anyway because it's
exactly.
It's something that we can prohibit. I remember now we have a selection property to prohibit it if we want to.
But you have to use clone for this to happen, right?
No, that's what I just thought. But I think no. I think clone makes it explicit that you want it to happen. But I think it can also happen automatically unless you specifically say with a selection property that you don't want them to be grouped.
Yeah.
I remember that.
But he just wants a reference to the API doc, as I understand it.
Yeah, but maybe we just need a paragraph to say what I just said.
It sounds like he's reading it as an option rather than just an inbuilt property. Maybe we should just rephrase it to say when.
Yeah, exactly. To be just clear about when it happens. I can do that.
We might also want to double check for the API doc whether we would allow to magically mapping to things to multiplex connections. So let's say the HTTP case, you're opening a new HTTP connection in quotes to send an request. The question is whether you would be allowed to be multiplexed on an existing connection.
Yeah, exactly.
So you specify the same host names, you specify the same transport parameters. Is it fine to be multiplexed on an existing connection? So HTTP is the only case where I think this could be interesting.
I don't know. Anyway, I assigned it to myself. I make a start with it, and it shouldn't be hard. I think it's just about being clear. Zero RTT stuff. I can't say he even fully read this. Needs to clarify how RTT data is handled. Oh, this is tricky. How would we know?
Where does 0TT
Text
message
there.
max len come from?
Like this
RTT message.
This corner case that he's pointing out doesn't actually exist, right? Because if you select a non-zero RTT, or a protocol that doesn't do zero RTT, then it's not going to be zero.
But it's actually clear where it comes from, because it's a read-only property.
Right.
So the system knows.
Right.
Maybe he missed that it's read-only. How is it derived? I mean, well, you look at the protocols and you know what they offer. The minimum of them, yeah. That's what I would do.
I guess, the implementation.
No, but I think there's some other misunderstanding here, right?
Okay.
Because it says if you have two of them, then the minimum will be zero, and the application will never get the benefit of fast open. But it depends on which one you pick.
That's not correct.
Exactly. It depends on which protocol you pick. So I think there's some other misunderstanding here.
So, but isn't the problem that you have to create a connection in order to understand how much data you can send in zero RTT? But then during zero RTT, during creation, you already have to provide the zero RTT data.
But that is how much data the application is able to handle duplicated. So that is a different thing, right? Then if the protocol can send it or not, this is another issue.
Yeah,
but you provide the zero.
You would always, if you are able to do 0TT, that means you have state from a previous connection or multiple previous connections.
That's the answer, probably, yes.
Yep. And you look at that saved state, and if you don't have any state, then you can't do 0TT, and so this max message line is like infinite.
You kind of have to say you have to remember this this max message length from the previous connection, and then you can use it to establish the next connection.
No, but isn't this? Yeah.
Could also be the minimum of all the connections, all the protocols that allow this kind of function, and then the system tries, and if it fails, you gave zero RTT data, but it became a round trip longer.
But then it's not a
but
connection
I
property,
thought
it's like a system property.
Isn't this value from the application, because this is what the application can handle? That's what the zero RTT message max length is, right?
It's a read-only property for the application. Here it is.
That's right.
Maximum message size concurrent with connection establishment.
I thought it was there. We have another one where you specify what you can handle.
Yeah, maybe it's that one. I don't know.
Okay,
message size on send.
With that
maybe
one.
this. There's message size on receive, on send.
Never mind. I mixed it up with another property.
Okay.
This can only ever be a hint anyway, right? Because it depends on the MTU, and the path might have changed since the last connection. So presumably it's either the sort of protocol the minimum of the protocol specific values, or something smaller based on a previous path, previous connection.
Yes. Yeah, maybe in the API it should also be specified a bit. I mean, maybe this should also be rephrased a little bit, right? Saying the maximum message size that the system is likely to be able to send, or something like that.
Represents an estimate.
It can be sent. It's a bit strict because it's not really clear anyway.
What
but
does
is there
9134 say that it refers to? Can you just click there?
What? Where?
It says see also section 9134.
Oh yeah. Safely replayable. Oh, that's just the boolean for stating that something is zero RTT data.
Right. Or zero.
Okay, yeah, this was the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I think you either have to like call this value on the previous connection, or it's useless, and that's maybe something we should clarify.
I mean, presumably it's either the minimum, the sort of minimum value of the sort of acceptable NTU for the protocol, or it's sort of a value from the previous connection.
Or actually, how do we define the zero RTT interface? It's like when you establish a connection, you have to provide the data right away, right?
Right.
Well, it can be sent right away, yeah.
So I mean, useless, I don't think is right, because you have this minimum packet size that all systems need to be able to handle, right? So you can, I mean, there is a minimum that you can assume as the minimum of all the protocols that do support zero RTT.
Yeah, but that's more a system parameter, not a connection parameter. What I'm saying is, if you have to provide the data already when you establish it, like when you create the connection object, then it doesn't help you to ask the maximum length after that anymore, because you already provided the data.
Yeah, but I mean, that number is known beforehand.
But then you need a different
As a
interface
minimum.
to ask it. Then it's not a connection-based interface. Or you have to ask the previous connection.
It can be a connection-based interface because it can default based on the previous connection to that destination.
But then do you even have like an interface to ask something that your connection before you establish it and provide data?
Yeah, you don't have the connection yet. I agree with Mirja on that.
Yeah.
You've got a pre-connection that tells you where you're going to connect to.
Isn't that
But don't you already
property
have to provide the
of,
data with the pre-connection when you do zero RTT? That's what I'm asking.
It
How
is a
does our
readable
zero
connection
RTT
property.
interface look?
It is a readable connection property, this, right? So you create a, which is strange. That's actually very strange, right? Because now we have a connection that we can ask about. No, maybe I'm wrong here.
Yeah, you can ask
Zero
what you got
Yeah,
and store it in your application, which is stupid because the system's storing it down in the bottom bit. So we've got it mixed up, I think, here.
Yeah, because you use that before you create a connection, but it is a connection property, which would only be readable after creating a connection.
That's what I'm saying.
Now I get it.
Okay, so there are two solutions.
Now
Either
I
it's
get it.
useless, we
Now
can
I
remove
see.
it, or we have to say you have to call this on the previous connection and then use it for the next connection.
Right, I see it now.
But you don't necessarily know which one you're going to be resuming. Yeah.
I don't think calling it before and keeping it in the application really helps, because then you're going to race different things to figure out what you're doing. This is a crazy place to store it.
It's that way, I guess, for you today, but we want to avoid it for TAPS.
Or kind of, we need a different way to actually use zero RTT. So it's some interface that tells you want to like create a zero RTT connection, but don't do anything. Just like select which one you want and then tell me how much data I have, and then I give you the data. But I don't think we have an
Which is
interface.
potentially where this came from, because one of the models for doing zero RTT is you create a connection and then you send idempotent data on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but usually that's one step, right? You create it and provide the data in the same call.
Well, not always. Yeah.
Do we have an interface to do it separately? Because usually it's pre-connection initiate with send, right? That's what we have.
Right. I think at some point we had an initiate and then you send separately, and then now we have initiate with send.
On the other hand, we have the pre-connection already, so we can call it on pre-connection, maybe.
That makes sense.
Wait, what were you saying? You're saying that in the pre-connection we can ask how much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you
Yes.
require the pre-connection to at least have the destination set and a couple
Yeah.
of
Or a
properties.
destination,
Mhm.
which it already has.
Or you can just query it on different pre-connections.
Pre-connection could
Yeah.
still match multiple protocols. So we have a pre-connection that could match SCTP and HTTP, and we extensionally have both open.
That's okay, but I can actually give you a size for both of them. It's going to be
Yeah,
a minimum in both, but that's all right.
Exactly, you get a minimum.
Okay, yep.
So
It's
this
better
is
than no
gonna
advice.
Okay.
this is gonna require changes to interface as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Do we want to? I guess we could do it in one PR then. Or do
Yeah.
that separate? Yeah.
Please.
More that we didn't understand the API, and then we didn't understand what it meant in the implementation.
It's not necessarily based on the previous connections, is it? It might be based on the minimum of the protocols. So they might just say, well, I do 500 bytes.
Yes. It could be something hard-coded into a protocol, but generally 0TT won't work unless you have some previous state. But you're right that it's possible to do it otherwise.
No. I agree with the state.
Oh, this
but
is-
I'm saying the length calculation could be done based on the type.
I see that we have a name assigned to it, so let me just go on.
Who's the name?
Tommy.
Tommy. Ha!
He,
No problem.
He assigned himself. Thank you, Tommy.
So, but do we even distinguish between connection and pre-connection properties? Really?
Oh, I don't think we have normally the concept that you can read properties of a pre-connection, I think.
We have never forbidden it, but we don't talk about that. We had discussions on that, and we said, yes, you can read them. If you don't know what you said, why shouldn't you be able to read it?
It could just be a separate function on it too.
I mean, at minimum, we have to clarify that it only kind of makes sense to read it on a pre-connection.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for all other things, it doesn't make much sense to read when it's a pre-connection. Just for this one, it does. Because it creates a data structure that doesn't do anything.
Great solution for it.
Sorry?
I'm sure Tommy will find a great solution for it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
Message framework clarifications. That sounds like a Tommy thing as well, I'm sorry to say.
Probably, yeah.
Does TAPS specification define require support of a particular set of message frameworks? Applications would take the defensive stance of not using them if they aren't required. And so on and so on.
Yeah, I'll take it, but I expect any changes here would be quite minimal.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Path changes. If the device is able to rejoin with the same IP address as stateful transfer can generally resume. I wanted to expand this a little bit to make the requirements clearer. If the connection can be resumed such a way.
No. I don't think this is valuable.
Okay, but I guess if we close it with that command, we should have a better way to phrase that.
Well, right. It sounds like what he's saying. It's like our original text is essentially just saying, like, look, your 5 tuple may go away, and then it can come back.
Yeah.
And because it can come back, don't tear down your connections too aggressively. What a given transport protocol does with this is entirely up to it. Like sockets already can handle this. Like a TCP socket that loses a route will recover, a UDP will recover. I don't think we need to go into the detail of what every transport protocol does to do its data reliability. Like it's not relevant to this.
I agree.
That's what I thought when I read it. I thought, well, yeah, sure, maybe this makes sense, but it's really part of the protocol. It's the transport that decides this.
Does it just need a statement explicitly?
Okay, this is a more detailed description of the behavior of the transport protocols that the transport services system would be using. We do not think that such details add value here. Okay.
Well, you add your comment too. Let's both
behavior
pile
of the because it doesn't directly matter here. Yeah. Okay.
Just you comment too.
Yeah. It's okay. Oh, mine as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Then we have two.
Yeah.
Let's close it.
Perfect.
It's beautiful. Specific transport protocol. Oh yeah, that was the one where we had quick mentioned in an example.
Oh, this is about mappings, right? It's like we need other documents.
Yeah.
Close with a pointer to future work on mappings.
Boop.
Brian, sorry, I talked in parallel.
Close with a pointer to future work on mappings.
Yeah, I kind of, or just take the label off and say like this is
for mappings.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Then we don't deal with it now.
That's the protocol that he didn't like, that we used protocols as examples that we didn't have mappings for.
No, neither do we, but that's the way it is at the moment.
Yeah. It is a bit awkward, frankly, but somehow it's also nice to hint that you could have other protocols than just TCP and SCTP and so forth.
But maybe if we put something, as Brian was saying, when we get to the mappings, we say that this is mappings for a few of the key protocols and others can come.
What do you mean when we get to the mappings? I mean, in the implementation draft, there is nothing more about mappings, I think, to be done.
No, yes, because you have some general text, right? And then you have the protocol specific mappings.
Or in the document itself. Yeah.
We could just say mappings for protocols such as blah, blah, blah can be expected to be defined in future and leave it vague as to who and when.
PR is cheerfully accepted.
Exactly. If you would like to see a mapping for DTLS, please write it.
Can we not write shall in capital letters for that?
So what do we do? I leave this issue as it is and we just go on?
Yeah, I think it becomes a future.
Well, we need to add a note. But it's...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can write it. I'll go to the next. Downgrade avoidance. Yeah. I think that was asking for a bit more text regarding downgrade avoidance, right? Should use all downgrade avoidance techniques that are specified for each protocol in the protocol standards. We can write that sentence.
But I mean, the architecture goes into this
TAPS.
already.
TAPS doesn't allow the application to specify a group of protocols with unequal security properties.
Right.
So maybe we just need a A reference to app architecture?
Yeah, maybe back reference to architecture saying, hey, over here in section, hold on, let me give you a section number.
Yeah.
Is it architecture or implementation that basically talks about that? Hold on.
No, it's architecture. Right?
Okay.
Oh, it's the security considerations. See the security considerations section of architecture.
Yeah.
Right.
As described above in equivalence. Oh, equivalence. Okay.
It needs a name. Oops, sorry.
Select between equivalent protocol stacks.
I'll assign it to Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just a sentence to add, I think. It needs to be phrased right. Oh, this. I think that was an IPv6 RFC. Default address selection for IPv6 may be relevant, and if so, should be added. I mean, it's not just added; it would have to be used somewhere. So I don't know.
Man, having a nit on the references section is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, is he an author of this RFC? As an academic, I would normally suspect when I see a comment like this.
Yeah, but I don't think we discussed that.
This is just a this is what happens by default if you don't specify a source address, right? So the discussion of pre-connections, if you don't specify the source address, see here for an example of how it will be picked by the operating system.
And just insert that as a sentence somewhere. But do we want to?
I don't think there's a good place to put it.
Does it add anything?
No.
No. Just close it.
Yeah.
Fine. I mean, if you don't know how IPv6 works, then you don't know how IPv6 works.
Right. Like, I mean, one of the things about the implementation document is that it is not exhaustive about how to implement an entire networking stack.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes anywhere, it will be the discussion of pre-connections in the interface draft, right?
Yes, it belongs more in the API. And the API already does have references for like whether or not we use a temporary local address.
Are you okay with that comment? It's an internal behavior of IPv6, which this document doesn't need to go into details about. It's basically if you understand IPv6 and you know you use it, then that's what you get, right?
Exactly.
Yep,
okay.
Close.
Oh yeah, it's only the specific transfer protocol considerations isn't assigned to anybody. I guess that's okay. It's future work. So then we assigned everything.
Woo.
What about these here? There was one.
Yeah, I rewrote that PR. So let's have a look at it and merge it.
Exactly. Like Shall we merge it?
Ah, nice.
There's this part here. Okay, this is shorter now. Right input from an operating system on a global can constrain or influence how Seems good to me.
Yep. Love it.
And it is. Oh yeah, it's below the diagram.
Below the diagram. Right below the diagram. It's where we talk about system policy.
Yes, exactly. Let's change my comment into OK somehow. I don't need to do that. We can just merge it. Find the button. Yes. Okay. That brings us to the end of this issue list, I think. Yay. All right. So we do these things soon and we're done with it, huh? Can I stop sharing?
Yeah, very nice. mean,
I find out
it
how.
looks like we're on a good path. Do we want to put an ETA on it? Or
By next week sometime.
that would be great.
Yeah.
I think I'll be done with my issue in about 45 seconds.
Very nice.
Yeah, I'll try to do mine tomorrow.
Thank you all. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into our next item, implementation update, and I believe Tommy has a slide set. All right, so you're going to be setting context for a discussion on implementation. Thanks. Let's take it away.
All right, thank you. Yeah, these are relatively light slides, but just a bit of a update, and we can have other people, chime in with what they're aware of and what they think. So we had previously had some discussions on implementations, and we have a couple that we know of. Within Apple, we have our network framework, which is Swift and C. There's also been a couple Python attempts that we've previously presented on in this group. And just the overall comment here that I wanted to make is, these are not exact matches for the current API draft. They're based on earlier versions, or they have some slight inconsistencies. They're very much in the spirit of TAPS, and they follow the general shape, but you couldn't port code exactly one-to-one between all of them. I don't know if there are other current ongoing implementations that people wanted to bring up here, but feel free to chime in if you want. Overall, I think this strategy here, and that's what I've been thinking of for our implementations, is that we probably want to see some rev of the API and implementations, and see more implementations of that API once we have kind of like the RFC locked up and finished. And maybe we're at that point now, or maybe we just say in a couple months or so we'll be done enough and have the approvals such that we're not going to see a major change. Since the goal of TAPS really is to have this API that allows transport agility, but you want this API to be stable enough over time and across different platforms that you can write your application against this API and let the transport evolve. It is useful to have that API be stable. And so to have alignment with the RFC, I think it makes sense to wait until that RFC is done. Just as an example, like we have not been updating the network framework APIs every year to match up to whatever the draft has currently been, because that would cause a lot of application churn and would not really be valuable to anyone. But I think once we have the RFCs, what I would hope to do is have a revision of our public APIs to align with that and offer more kind of compatible symbols that are really obviously TAPS related, not as a Python library author, but I think it would be great if we could see similar updates and formalization of the Python bindings. And this could also be an opportunity for seeing more formal efforts in other languages. We'd had previous discussions, at least for our implementation, of having C++ bindings, potentially trying to pitch those as standard library bindings as well. It'd be great to see formal things in Go and Rust, etc. And just drew this little flow chart here. So, for the purposes of APIs, I think the first thing that needs to come to really cause the expansion of the implementations is having the standard reference that they can all use and build off of. Then we can see more implementation work. We can see then after that deployment and release of the APIs as things that are built into different platforms or into different libraries. And then we'll see the application adoption. So all that to say, I am expecting it to be, a bit of a road that starts with the RFC kind of finalization before we see the widespread availability and then adoption of something that is more formally TAPS. I think it would also be interesting once we have this and once we have implementations deployed, let's say, we update our APIs, we get some other APIs in other languages available to have a wave of trying to increase the awareness and promote those implementations and talk about how they are based on a standard. Right.
I think there's actually there's a fifth step here after application adoption, which is relevant to the working group, which is probably updating the RFCs. At least this is what we saw on IPFix, right? Like IPFix was standardized based off, largely off of Cisco's implementation, and then a bunch of people tried to implement it, and that led to significant simplification of the internet standard version. And I would expect that we're probably going to see that too. If we get to stage 4, I think that either the TAPS working group or some area successor organization should probably take on moving the RFCs to internet standard, because I suspect we're going to learn a lot.
That was actually my last sentence on my last slide of,
yay.
You will probably need to come back. Like, one of the questions, Martin, in general, the chairs and ADs need to consider is, what do we do with the group? And we can do work on mappings. But the other comment here based on this chart is, we'll probably get feedback. We may want to do some BISs at some point, which is like a long cycle. So, maybe one option is we, go dormant for a while, then have the option to close or reopen based on feedback we get. So totally agreed with you, Brian, there. For the mappings work, I think that is the only other thing that seems clear that we could do document-wise. Quick and HTTP are the clear candidates. I would still need to revise the work I'd done for the Quick one. I don't think it's likely that those would exist anywhere outside of TAPS. We would certainly want cross-pollination and review, but I don't see a world where the Quick and HTTP protocol groups would actually be defining these. So if we want to see them happen, we should do them here. And that's all I have. So what do people think?
Yeah, Gory has a hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, well, would it be adopted in Quick? Martin thinks it would be adopted in Quick. So is it totally unfeasible that Quick would?
Martin, do you want to comment? I would be surprised if it were.
I actually thought I didn't exactly promise that. I mean, I think I said that it would certainly be, setting aside the practical questions. Like, I think it would be nice if at one point we kind of had this, and then the different protocol groups could then do mappings rather than just sort of be in the mapping business forever. Tommy's the chair of HTTP, of course, so I'm willing to defer to his guidance there. If we're interested in shutting this down, like I think it would be sensible to ask Quick what they think and if they want to take it. I mean, certainly there's a lot of the same people, so I don't think so. The Quick working group would have plenty of TAPS experience if it wanted to take this on. It's not like it's I don't know, like co-app or something. On the dormant question, so I don't think Zahed is on. He's not on right now, and I haven't discussed this with him, so I'm not. So take this with a grain of salt. But his pattern in RMCAT was to leave it open until the documents got published. So that gives us a fair amount of runway to be dormant, assuming these implementations are forthcoming relatively soon.
But do you mean just
Zahed was especially thrilled by that with RMCAT.
Yeah, but Martin, I mean, I assume you just mean the base RFCs being published, and like, given my flow chart, I don't expect. I mean, once they're in the RFC editor queue, then I think it makes sense to do a revision. But for ourselves, with our network framework, like we do, major API revisions normally come out in June. That's not going to be this June because we don't have it all finalized. So like maybe next June would be like the earliest that it first goes out to have any developers try. And then we want to talk about other languages. Like I think it's a much longer time frame than the RFCs being published.
Okay. So
I think it'd be perfectly appropriate to go like properly dormant. And come back if we need to, or just resurrect the group if you need to.
Sure. Before I give up the floor here, so the other thing I would like to sort of mention as a possibility here is my transport discovery draft, which at my previous employer I was excited about. I'm not so excited at my current employer. And just to briefly remind people, the idea here is that if you've like user space protocol implementations, there's like a secure way to sort of register those with the TAPS that's running over the OS, so you can use them. And I just briefly ask if anyone who actually has a TAPS implementation is interested in that, and should we resurrect it, or is it dead?
So we have a discoverability configuration as an agenda item, but yeah, I think it's an interesting question for this item as well. But Aaron has a hand up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to take notes while I'm thinking about what I want to say. This is coming from 30,000 feet, which has really been sort of my involvement in the working group for a while now. But it just seems to me that the active group has become really down to just the sort of the diehard authors. And I feel like what occurs to me as a reasonable way forward, and I'm just putting this out here as a proposal for discussion, not really even a recommendation, but what seems intuitive to me is to have the working group go dormant and leave the mailing list open as a point for collaboration between the authors and any implementers. And then when you get a critical mass of topics, when there's some pressure to create a charter and restart the working group to do that. And I don't think it's clear that the mappings work. I mean, we've tried to see if there's a critical mass of folks who want to collaborate on that. And it looks like the answer is probably no. But if it turns out that if somebody takes it up and they run into some problems and it generates like some interesting discussion, then that might be sort of an example of an anchor that you could use to reset the charter. But I feel like just starting to add more topics onto this, what it's going to do, it's just going to put more stuff onto the plates of the folks who are on this call now. It seems to me that what we want is to get some people who are motivated to drive the work forward because it's useful to them, not because they're invested in seeing TAPS out in the world. So that's sort of my 2 cents.
Okay, Colin.
I think I sort of largely agree with that. We seem to me to be too keen on closing working groups, which raises a very high bar to restarting the work, rather than putting a milestone for 3 years in the future that says sort of review status and decide whether to continue or close down. I guess the mappings are, I mean, it's not clear we have the energy to do them. For the follow-on implementations, I think it would be nice to see implementations and standardized APIs for like Rust, for example. Do we know of anyone who's doing that work, or are there plans to encourage someone to do that work?
Tommy?
I mean, just to answer that, I don't know of any particular commitments for those, but there are some cases where it would be there'd be some candidates I'm aware of who would be interested in doing that stuff, but it will be easier to get those things going with an RFC in hand.
Yeah, I mean, the RFCs will appear pretty reasonably quickly, I would think, now, right? But yes, I agree.
Brian?
It might.
So that sounds like keep the list open and keep the working group open but dormant is what it sounds like that discussion is converging on. Am I hearing that correctly? I mean, it makes sense to me, but
What I was trying to convey is no charter, no agenda, no meetings, but an active mailing list.
Yep.
So the other option would be leave the working group open and charter quick and HTTP agenda protocol mappings for in 3 years.
Not sure I would want to put something on the charter that we don't have anybody identified to do.
I mean, one thing we did in RMCAT was to add a milestone for a couple of years in the future from the point where the documents were done, to say sort of review review whether there's been any implementations and whether we need to progress with the group or close down.
That makes sense.
I don't know if I'm not sure what the difference is between like running with no charter, no deliverables, and no meetings, but closed is different from just being, but open is just being different from being closed, because ultimately you'll just have to, I mean, closing the group doesn't mean that we can't recharter it someday and bring it back if there's like a lot of TAP specific work, but I'm not.
The difference is activation energy to restart it.
I think that the activities that are required will be the same regardless. So it's the same activation energy as far as I'm tracking, unless you think it's a perception issue, which I don't know if that's people really track that.
Creating a new working group is a much bigger ask than resurrecting an existing group and just saying, so do we need to do any work here? Let's revise the milestones.
I guess it depends on the goodwill of the transport aides at the time, which is something I can't, I'm not a responsible AD anyway, but I can't really oblige obligate the future ADs to just sort of say, yes, this is an obvious thing, and let's rubber stamp it to start again.
Yeah, I think I want.
I don't know how. I mean, obviously, none of us know how big this BIS would be. If it's a small BIS, a small diff rather, like I mean, it seems like a good fit for TSCWG. So I think you can certainly make a case this work can go elsewhere. But if this group has a lot of energy to like go do a lot of TAPS work, then I suppose it's fine for it to be a different working group. But I do think that we get more eyeballs in these other working groups, and they all those working groups have a critical mass of like TAPS people.
Yeah, so I'm as much as I would like to come back in 2 or 3 years and do a revision, like I think we can only guess here wrong. So I think if we do that, what will happen is in 2 or 3 years we might just decide to close the working group then. So I think we should rather close it now.
Martin was probably serious when he said TSBWG could kind of play the keeper and do a small thing or do a presentation to try and bootstrap restarting this work. That would seem well within the charter what TSBWG does. So maybe putting the thing dormant for 3 years with the only item being a milestone to see if we ever wake up seems like a bit of an odd creation, really.
Gory, just for clarification, did you say doing a tabs biz would not be in scope for TSVWG, but only coming and saying, oh, we could restart tabs? Or
No. I mean, once the ADs close the group, if there's relevant work on a topic which has been previously published in another working group, then there is an expectation that that would be bootstrapped somehow via TSVWG. Whether TSVWG takes it on and says, well, that's a piece of work we'll work on, or whether it talks to the AD and after it's been talked about and we say, well, it's critical mass here, how do you want to proceed? Maybe they want to quickly spin up a working group or place it somewhere else. That's okay. I mean, the difficult bit is getting to the state where you actually have a document and then a group of authors and then people saying, I want this published. So that bit could be done.
And I'd already been thinking, like, for the mappings, depending on the timing, certainly a quick mapping would make sense to present to Quick. But let's say, Quick was interested, wanted to review it, but said, it's not really in our charter to do this API mapping work. Then we say, okay, the Quick mapping document lives in TSVWG as far as how it gets published. That is, an option we could try.
Didn't we already try that with Quick, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and there was an interest? I thought that you
right.
presented something.
I think it was more than that. It was quite a while ago.
Okay. So it's immature.
Could...
So I guess the question in my mind is whether TAPS is sufficiently defined. I mean, going back to the go back to your phase chart, Tommy, because I think this is I think the way we should be thinking about it. What we want to get is application adoption, and is TAPS sufficiently defined that we can do that? Modulo the fact that we might learn things that cause us to want to make changes. Is there enough TAPS to enable that? And if there is, then maybe we should put the pens down and let that work happen and figure out what the issues are, rather than invent issues that we don't know what they are yet, or be a zombie working group. If the gaps, if the mappings are a blocker and the other working groups are unwilling or unable to do the work, then that's a reason to do it, right? That means that our work isn't complete.
So, Aaron, when would we know? Because, I mean, I can see the case where we might if after 3 months after publishing, people had already goes, wow, we want to implement this. This is too far out. So do you have thoughts on how far?
Well, so I mean, I defer to our area directors, but I think we have an obligation to keep the working group open until the RFCs come out, because you don't know what's going to come up in the editing process. That we want to bring in more than just the authors. I mean, I don't think there's a race to close the working group, but I think what we're talking about here is whether we want to identify new charter items to work on, right? We can just we can leave the group open and kind of keep it flexible for a while. But I think the question we're talking about here is whether we want to identify work items and rally the 12 folks on this call, because there don't seem to be many others, to do that work. And just based on, and I'm not close enough to the implementation efforts, and Martin did say that there was somebody who wasn't ready to identify themselves, but if but the sense I've gotten from Tommy's comments is that it's going to take a while before we start to get really useful feedback from not only the implementation community, but also the application community on what to do. And it seems like, you know, what are we going to do between now and then other than like try to justify our existence as a working group? So I just don't, you know, I don't want to dissuade people who want to push work forward, but I'm not hearing anything other than people who want to be available if something comes up, and we don't have that something yet.
I'm right on that last sentence you made, as in, I would love to see this thing fly. I think it's really important. I would happily make time available to make the next TAPS document, but I feel more that the responsibility here is that someone has to enter the room and say why that document has to be written. So if it's Tommy coming back saying, hey, we implemented it, we now have more wisdom, we want to change it, that would be cool. If it was someone else with the same thing, or someone wanting to come and do something, that would be different to us saying, and we want to finish the work, and therefore we're going to add management, system policy, nibs. Really quick is what we're going to say, but I mean it falls in the same thing, because it's not us that's going to do this, it's somebody going to come along and say TAPS is wonderful, it doesn't support quick, but I want to do it. And it's the I want to do it that really has a big sway with me.
Right.
I'm trying to catch up on the chat. Brian, can you unpack your comment? I think
yeah. So we have no, there's no blog post. My yep was to, yes, it's going to take a while, right? Like it'll take years. I was yepping something that Tommy said, and the thing I hadn't seen Miria's thing. We don't have a blog post. Somebody should write it. I mean, I think I wrote one for AppNic like a long time ago when this was, before we were mostly done. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to collaborate on that with somebody. Michael, Tommy.
Yeah, and we should talk to Greg Wood, etc.
Exactly.
But I think it's like as I'm drawing here, once we have an RFC, and once we have it's like our API has updated to match the RFC or whatever. Like once we hit some critical point of like, okay, the API is implemented and you can adopt it in a couple different languages, that's when you want to do the push. And I think that'd be a great thing to have the working group list open for, and all of us coordinate on what should go into that. But we don't, and maybe we co-opt some TSV area meeting sometime, and get some time there to talk about it. But we don't need the working group to be active to do that.
Okay, so I'm curious what Zayed has to say.
I'd be very happy to contribute to a blog post or something like that. But I also agree that it would be great if Apple at some point further down in time understand that this is going to take a while. But if at some point there would be a more clear statement about really being aligned with TAPS, towards the public, because I think this could also have an influence on other developers potentially.
Okay, people, can we please start using the queue, because I'm seeing people in the queue and people talking who are not in the queue.
Excuse me.
Okay, Zayed, please.
Yeah, thanks for reminding using the queue. Yeah, I mean, I joined late, so thanks for keep continuing the discussion. I think I joined late, but I'm getting like very gist of what's happening. Just to answer Gauri's question, like how long we're gonna keep this. We need to keep this working group open. The options are basically we have the ISG evaluation, if everything goes fine, we go into RFC editor auth 48. I would like to keep this working group up and running until the auth 48 is done, so that anything changed in the document that we have a chance to actually call on the working group and see like the changes make sense. The other option is like all the things like we can close the working group right now and I do area sponsor, or like any area editor does an area sponsor. That's like a least preferred option for now. What are the other options we've been hearing, like the dormant and all this thing? I think my preference is like close. If we are not doing anything, we're waiting for implementation to happen. Then we close the working group and come back again later on with all our questions and other things. And then you have like TSBWG, Quick, or other working group, or just somehow keep the TAPS mailing list open so we can have discussions there rather than having the working group open. So those are like my preferred solutions. So keep the TAPS working group until we publish the RFC, and then also keep the mailing list up if we are closing the working group. Anything else other than that would need some sort of thinking and why we should do it. Just my couple of cents here. Thanks.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, regarding just this outreach thing, it seems to me that our actual blocking constraint at this point is OSs. I mean, the value proposition to app developers is, look, you can like write this and run it everywhere, but right now everywhere is iOS. So like rather than just, I mean, IETF blog posts are good and it's something that we can point to, but to the extent there is like a TAPS cabal, I think we should try to actually actively target OS communities, whether it be, you know, the Linux community, FreeBSD, someone going over to Microsoft and sweet talking them. That would actually be, and you know, of course, Android as well, which I guess Brian and I would have the ball for. That would actually be, I think, the most effective way to try to get this to be a major part of the ecosystem.
Okay, Aaron.
So I have a question that will, as usual, expose my ignorance. I think to the rest of the group, which is I'm thinking about like one of the other areas that has activities that has been useful in encouraging integration implementation has been you know, the hackathon. But I think what we're talking about here is sort of implementer support, answering questions, helping people understand things, you know, trying to make it easy. Is the hackathon a useful forum for doing that? We've also done some outreach. I think Miria went to you know, like Linux networking stack conference, that kind of thing. I'm reacting to Martin's comment, which I think is really dead on, which is you know, to enable applications, we need to support OS implementation. What's the best way to do that?
I think I'm next in queue. I was going to make a comment to Martin that while I agree it's critical to have this available across a diversity of OSs, it doesn't necessarily need to be the OS implementers doing it. It's certainly, I think, viable to have it be libraries that are open source and cross-platform or implemented in different languages. I know in the case of Android, it's very, very difficult to get things in standard libraries, but people use Cronet and people use other libraries that are not quite baked into the OS, and I think that's a very viable option. And I think there are people beyond Apple's implementation who have been talking about libraries that would work cross-platform on FreeBSD, etc. So that should alleviate some of the pressure for other OSs. And I agree that the hackathon would be very cool. Probably once you have, maybe there's two projects, right? There's some of like, hey, let's make the library work on FreeBSD, and then there's the other one of hackathon people, please start writing your code in TAPS and see how that goes.
Would soliciting maybe like an Internet Society grant for implementers in the open source world be a useful thing here?
Maybe, but we probably want to identify implementers first, right? I mean, so like we can certainly help with that framework, but we'd want to identify like people to do the actual implementation work before we go. And it's like, let's get some money and then find implementers. I think is not a great model for that for the ISOC grants.
Yeah, that's more likely to be successful if someone is seen to be doing the work and then can be given some money to be encouraged to keep doing it and make it production strength, I would think.
Okay, all of that makes sense to me. I'm just noticing we have 17 minutes left until top of the hour. And it occurs to me we're already discussing our next agenda item. What can we do to foster deployment of TAPS? So I wonder if there's more on that right now, because we haven't really talked about discoverability configuration. However, Devon isn't here, and we also haven't talked about mappings in like concrete terms. I would like us to at least touch on that. So are there more thoughts on deployment for now, or?
So on the deployment topic, I think Zach made a good point. Do we have all of the missing pieces? And I guess the only way we know that might be if someone tries to build another implementation. But
How useful is TAPS without an HTTP binding?
Philip.
This question. I think my main motivation going into TAPS or moving that stuff forward was originally trying to do fancy stuff with HTTP and additional socket options, and finding that this socket API was completely unfit for it. And so I think, as we see that most traffic today is HTTP, and especially if I look at what I'm doing in my day work at the moment, this is 80% HTTP at least. I would say this is extremely valuable, especially if you think about programmers that often use HTTP APIs. I would love to see it more on the operating system. From there, I would say having an HTTP mapping and probably also nice HTTP implementation would be really valuable and a large boost for TAPS.
That the HTTP thing, I think we should also need to consider about the web transport work that's happening in IETF. I mean, I really doubt like HTTP people would use anything else other than a web trans when they need transport support directly manipulated from the web space. So you also have to convince people like why we need an HTTP TAPS mapping if the deployment is not there?
So I think WebTrans is quite orthogonal to TAPS mapping, because web transport is just piggybacking different transport over TAPS. Over HTTP. So I'm rather talking to application developers that are not within a web browser, but just using HTTP to access APIs and other stuff. And for them,
yeah. So Phillips, how much of your 80% traffic that you see and HTTP traffic is from non-browser application? And how much they need TAPS support for their things?
So there's a lot of non-HTTP traffic that is not web browsers.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of number, like, so that we can judge that? Okay.
No, I've no concrete number but I've seen a lot of API traffic in the background, where we just have a REST model to connect some sort of API, and usually the libraries used there, if you're lucky, it's actually libcurl. If you're unlucky, it's something that isn't able to do anything close to happy eyeballs, and if you're unlucky, it does not even implement a connect call based on Stevens, but just tries the first address and fails badly if it doesn't work. So having HTTP support in the socket API is a big selling point. But on the other hand, most of I'm seeing that's not eyeball traffic is a lot either implemented in Go or is implemented in JavaScript or is implemented in Java, and using these worlds APIs, which are not perfect, to be honest.
Okay,
Okay, so
I mean those community, those we think like would be benefited about an HTTP mapping over TAPS. I mean, if there is representation from them asking for something that we know and we can judge and evaluate, so that we have a problem to solve there actually, then it's a good motivation. Otherwise, we need to dig into a bit deep. So we work on a real problem. Yeah. Okay. Chris.
yeah, so I wanted to nudge us towards, as we're talking about HTTP mappings, and I saw a comment about quick mappings in the chat. What's the status of A, or quick mapping document, which exists but I believe has expired, and B, a potential HTTP mapping document? Do we have any volunteers to contribute? Tommy.
I mean, I had written that quick mapping document. I'm happy to keep working on it as time permits, and also happy to help work on the HTTP. It would be useful to have, other contributors or co-authors. I've based some of the mappings on what we have done since we have implemented both Quick and HTTP in here. But I think to be viable, it'd be very useful to have others who come from other perspectives be able to contribute as well.
Was that you asking for text contributions or a co-author or both?
I think a co-author.
Mm.
So it's not coming from a one-sided viewpoint.
Michael, or whoever wanted to. Ooh, we have a queue now. Okay, I got Zahid first.
Got lucky. And then Michael. So yeah, on the quick, I think Martin, you made a comment. If it is a quick mapping, and then quick working on perhaps will have more audience and more like expertise on those kind of things. So the suggestion was like that work could go to quick working group or something like that. Anybody has any concrete comment on Martin's view? I just wanted to know.
Sounds like no.
We can't hear you yet. I think we briefly talked about whether or not a quick document would be, a quick mapping would be, I guess, how it would be received in quick. I forget where we landed on that.
Okay. So Tommy, what do you think about
right,
that?
we have to ask.
Yeah. As an author.
Can you clarify?
So I think the comment I saw from Martin Duke was like, if we're doing a quick mapping of TAPS, quick working group will have like more audience and expertise to actually, because they will be mostly the user of that API, right? A mapping. So it might be good to actually move that work to quick working group rather than keeping it in TAPS. I mean, I just wanted to know like what all other people here think.
Given, I mean, years ago we had talked about it to the quick working group, and there wasn't appetite at that point. Now that was also a long time ago, and before we were even doing multipath quick, etc. However, my guess is that it would still not be something that the working group, the quick working group, would actually want to take on, given that that is where the protocol happens. Like, we didn't do the TCP mappings in TCPM. And I do disagree that I don't think it's the people within the quick working group that would be using the TAPS mappings, right? It's the people who use the TAPS mappings for quick are arbitrary application developers who don't want to know what quick is. They just want to be able to check a box to say, I want this cool new quick thing, and get that via TAPS. So I think it's more likely that we would review that work in quick, but run it in either some form of this working group or in TSVWG.
Okay, I mean, I'm just hearing if anybody else have comments on that one.
So this reminds me of
trying to decide on that one. I mean, that's not the point here. Point here is like if anybody has any other comments other than what Tommy said.
So this reminds me of early on in TAPS, we tried very hard to engage with the apps area when it was just the apps area to try to identify users and users' needs from TAPS. And I'm thinking about Tommy's point, which is a good one. But I don't know if we've got the insight of this group, because we never really had like great participation from the apps area. But it sounds like the place to focus on user support are people who would get benefit out of TAPS but don't understand it enough to be able to use it, or not don't understand it, but would use it if it existed. So early adopter types. I guess Tommy's got a captive audience at Apple, or I don't know if it's captive or not, but at least in-house users where you both provide an operating system and the applications. Maybe we should try to find some other examples. Focus on supporting them.
Okay, Gory.
Yeah, you know, we kind of half got there with the idea of taking something to the hackathon once it was an RFC and Tommy had an API. And
Okay, so is anybody interested in, I guess we're not talking about the next IETF for the hackathon thing, right? But is anybody interested in taking this on? And like when? Trying to
no,
just
Post.
what next
it
steps?
has to be after the
Post
RFC.
RFC,
Has to be
post
post RFC.
updated
Okay.
implementation. So like we're talking about like
Right.
Prague.
a year out
Yeah.
Okay.
from
Oh, even
July
further. Okay.
or farther.
Okay, got it. So what are our next steps for now? I mean, obviously we're finishing our
Wait.
existing documents. Wait, right. So it doesn't sound like we're ready to jump in and have a meeting at IETF 117, for example, or
No. I think that well, I mean, we're talking not an IETF meeting this year, possibly toward the end of next year, depending. We probably want to. Another next step is the IETF blog post. We probably do want that to come out around about the time the RFC goes. And I'm happy to hold a pen there. I would like some help on that, but I'm happy to hold a pen there.
And I think we do need a meeting in shorter time frame between this group of people, but that's probably an open side meeting.
Yeah, we can do that in Prague.
Organized. Yeah, Prague might be a good time for that. Yeah.
Yep.
a side meeting about what specifically?
Since it was my plan that actually probably came from Tommy in creation. I mean, the idea that the RFCs have been put out there and we can plan a hackathon around it. That's going to require a bit of planning as well. So we do that and we figure out what we're trying to do. And maybe at that point, we bring anything else, bubble it up and say, well, TAPS is still active, but this is not happening in the IETF yet. But we kind of discuss it and work it out. I think this is a useful side meeting, and I think we could even make it a little bit public by pointing people at, well, TAPS isn't meeting as a working group because we have no active documents, but come along here if you're interested in TAPS to see if other people turn up or not. If they don't, we can still plan it. If they do, all the better.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Any last words? Tommy?
No, just thank you all. Good to chat.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy.
Yeah. These
Thanks
are the
a lot,
last words of all of
yeah.
TAPS.
Right.
Is this the moment to say thanks for the fish?
Yeah, thanks for the fish.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed we still have so much energy going.
Okay, Chairs, I think you two and I need to talk a bit more perhaps on these things, but let's catch up on that later. Thanks for
Right,
today.
yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.